Welcome back into the Big 1-2 here on 365 Sports. Paul Catalina, JD Piquel, and JD, our obligatory realignment segment here on the Big 1-2. Last week, some news that BYU would be one of the schools that they entertain for realignment. That there's also a realignment working group, Kirby Hocutt, Mac Rhodes, and others on that working on realignment, and that they will hear it. There's no real timetable on it, nor does there have to be. They need to do it right, figure out who they are. But just your thoughts on the Big 12 acknowledging that expansion, realignment, all that has, like, expansion is on the table. I'm sorry, it's not the realignment working group. It's the expansion working group.
Sure.
But BYU being a part of it, and that there is a working group now where they're saying, yes, we are working on the potential to expand.
Yeah, I think the whole reason as to why they now have an expansion group is a little bit of a bad optic for the Big 12. Like, now the Pac-12 says, hey, bottom line, you just don't bring enough to us, so we're going to have to say no. Like, the analogy I used on the hard count was when you ask a girl to prom and she says no, and you ask, you have the gall to ask her why, and she says, well, you're just not very good looking. And so the Pac-12 told the Big 12, hey, you're not that good looking. We don't want to add you. And so the Big 12 is now mustering their dignity and trying to go out shopping and find someone that does think they're good looking. And so for me, that just communicates, okay, the merger's probably not going to happen. If not with the Big 12, or excuse me, not with the Pac-12, the AAC feels like a less likely option out. They have a subgroup just to expand. And so for the BYU to the Big 12, I'd be stoked for that. I think that makes a lot of sense from a football merger standpoint.
I've gotten a lot of people sending me messages about this, saying, because I think BYU, if you're going to expand, is the best possible option.
Yeah.
Now, I understand that they bring some problematic elements in that, one, they're not going to play on Sundays and in all the other sports, so that's going to be kind of a pain. But to me, it's kind of minor. And I also don't think – why I think the Pac-12 messed up before was, they were like, well, we don't want religious schools and we don't want schools with this. Like, look, man, you want schools that are going to help you make you money. And to get in the weeds with politics and ideologies. And look, there's many things that, like, religious schools you can probably get in the weeds about between actual religious schools. I could pick a fight between BYU and Notre Dame right now about who thinks who's right. But in BYU's different. I mean, it's a different kind of a thing altogether. Everything's different. Like, believe me, go to Salt Lake City. It's a different kind of vibe in Salt Lake City. But this is not about any of that. This is about your football team playing these other football teams, and that's it.
Yeah.
So don't bring all that other stuff into it, because it's completely pointless. Completely pointless. Just go play football and let people live their lives.
Just make it a football merger. Just keep the other sports where they're supposed to be. Bring football. We're not going to play on Sundays unless you play Labor Day weekend, and BYU's just not going to play on Labor Day weekend, which is fine. So the Big 12 can schedule around that. And for the Pac-12, it's like, dude, how many more life rafts do you think are going to come down your way that are going to be better than these 8 teams?
Yeah.
Like, probably not that many, especially if you want to add close to, let's say they want to get to 16. I don't think you have 4 teams coming down that river that are going to voluntarily, be down to just merge with you.
That's why they have the alliance, because this round of realignment, unlike the last one was about TV markets. Well, now that's kind of a different thing because of streaming and, did Rutgers and Maryland, for example, help the Big Ten really knock it out in the DMV and in New York City? No, they're not. Those are pro sports areas. They're not big college areas. And Rutgers, what are they good at? Again, Maryland, what are they good at? And they're not good at football. They're, nobody's talking about the Terrapins rolling through the Big Ten. So this round of realignment is about, okay, so the last was about TV markets. Well, now this one's about the actual TV programs. This is about, because there's so many things you can watch on television right now at any different time of the day.
It's great.
Yes, it's fantastic. We're peak TV.
Yeah.
Whatever you want to watch. Like, you get tired of watching sports, there's a superhero movie. You get tired of watching superhero movies, you can watch Peaky Blinders. You get tired of watching Peaky Blinders, you can watch Gossip Girl.
Great show,
whatever.
Yeah.
Whatever. Peaky Blinders or Gossip Girl.
Haven't seen Gossip Girl.
Yeah,
that'd be way funnier if I said Gossip Girl, but Peaky Blinders.
Yeah, I know. Really but I'm just saying, like, whatever you're into, you want to watch reality TV, there's tons of it. There's a channel for friggin' dogs now. It's $3.99 a month on DirecTV and maybe some other things, but it's called Dog TV. And it's just like stuff like you can leave the television on for your dog, so your dog doesn't feel alone in the house.
No kidding.
But yeah, man, I don't know if like when I leave the house, some weird stuff goes on that the dogs, and then it flips over when I come back in. I don't know, but it's just dog TV. There's TV for dogs, so there's everything. So how do you combat when there's a channel for literally everything you want? You need to have the best matchups possible. That's what this is about with Texas and Oklahoma going to the SEC. That means big brands playing each other almost every week in that conference. Very rarely in the SEC, in the new SEC, will they have a week where they're like, none of these games are good. Or none of these games are brand names. Even if it's Tennessee, who's been, in the middle of the pack at best since they won the national title in 1998, even them playing Oklahoma is a big deal. Those things are huge. So yeah, you're going to get a couple of, Vanderbilt's, versus Mississippi State's in there, but at the end of the day, that's a small price to play for Florida versus Oklahoma, or Bama versus Texas, all that's going to happen. So how do you do that if you're the other conferences? Well, you make an alliance, which is what they did, which means that you're going to have scheduling into the future where it's like, what are the good games in the Big Ten this week? Well, we had a couple of, Maryland and Rutgers, but we also have Ohio State's going to play USC, and Michigan's going to play Clemson, and Michigan State's going to play FSU, and so you got good games. Penn State's going to play Oregon. All those things are going to happen, so that's good for television. And if you're the Big 12, how do you make it good for television now? It's going to be difficult, but you got to find those things like BYU. I don't know if that's good for television, but I do know there's 2 schools in the country, maybe 4 if you count Army and Navy in this. But I guess Air Force, kind of. They're not quite as popular as Army and Navy. But
brands.
But as far as I know that when Notre Dame is on and when BYU is on, I have people in all 50 states watching that game. I don't know how many. I don't know how many Mormons there are in Maine, or how many Catholics there are in South Carolina. But I mean, there are the flagship school for their religion. Baylor maybe can make that argument too, I guess. I mean, not that they're getting good, but they're not quite that level as BYU or Notre Dame as for Catholicism and for the Mormon religion. They're the flagship school for that religion, for that group. So people are going to watch the BYU game, whether they went to BYU or their kids go to BYU or not. Most of those, they've got a lot of fans that just grew up because you root for BYU. I grew up Catholic. I know it. Half the people I know are somehow Notre Dame fans. They didn't go to Notre Dame. They're not going to go to Notre Dame. Notre Dame's not really even that big of a school. It's like 9,000 kids maybe. But when Notre Dame is on, you're watching the Irish.
Yeah. I mean, allegiance to your religion is, arguably for a lot of people more of an allegiance than your alma mater. But I'm interested to see how much does this stick for the Pac-12? Because for the Pac-12, it was like we just shook hands. How much do you think that's going to hold when something sweeter comes along for these other 2 conferences? But yeah, I mean, then it leaves the Big 12.
For USC in particular, the Pac-12's one goal is to keep USC happy.
Right. So if
they don't have to worry about literally anybody else. They have to worry about USC. So if they can keep USC happy, then that's fine. If they can tell you USC, listen, you're going to have a great slate of non-conference games, people are going to watch, your TV value is going to go up, we're going to give you more money, they're going to be happy with that.
Right.
If they cannot keep USC happy, then that's when USC is going to start going, well, that Big Ten doesn't seem too bad.
Right. So then the alliance is like, okay, well, we really just wanted USC.
Yeah.
I mean, we appreciate that y'all are a part of this, but we just shook hands. Remember, we shook hands about USC.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, we'll see what happens there. But I mean, for the Big 12 and for the Pac-12, I mean, if you're the Big 12, who else do you add? I mean, you mentioned there's 50 states. I mean, BYU, right? But then you have 9.
BYU.
So you have to have an even number ideally.
What I like is I'm going for big alumni.
Right.
I want
UCF.
I want big schools. So UCF is a massive school.
Cincinnati.
I want UCF. I want
Marquette,
Cincinnati.
Yeah.
Cincinnati, Ohio's a growing state. So I want alumni, people who will, wherever they are around the country, tune in on streaming.
Yes.
It's not about the market, it's about the alumni and where they'll go on streaming.
100%.
So they're going to be excited about the conference and Cincinnati playing better games than I want Cincinnati. Yeah. I want Memphis. And here's the 4 teams I want are BYU, UCF, Cincinnati, and Memphis. And I want Memphis for this reason. Memphis as a market is not, it's 51st.
Sure.
So it's essentially a top 50 market.
Okay.
It could be 50th by a year from now,
Well.
But it's close enough to a top 50 market. And FedEx has already said that if they get invited, they said it last time around, they'll sponsor the championship game. If I'm the Big 12, if a company like FedEx, who's never going to lose money ever,
Yeah.
look, okay, financial people, I know they might lose money. I know something might happen, but the post office is a wreck now, so people go to FedEx and UPS.
I need to order stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So FedEx, look, FedEx is never going to lose money. Like they're just not. They're a well-run company that always has money. They have tons of money to spend on advertising, tons of money to spend on sponsorships. If I'm the Big 12, I might even start with Memphis.
Yeah.
I might just tell Memphis, like, you guys are in if you bring FedEx. You got FedEx, you're in.
Yeah.
I want their money.
And I'm good with that. Like, I'm good with adding like 2 to 3 AAC teams, but when the conversation becomes let's merge with the AAC, it's like,
no,
dude, I don't want Eastern Carolina. And also, they would have been like somebody would have gotten them by now if that was going to bring you that much money to merge with the AAC.
So
like, you're on sale for a reason.
Yeah, I want the big schools in that conference that can increase my alumni base, because again, is Baylor versus UCF or Texas Tech versus Cincinnati gonna raise the flags on any, like, it's not going to compare to anything you've got going on in some of these other things, but it's better than the alternative. And if you're talking about let's get into big alumni bases, that's what I want. Yeah, because TV markets aren't it. If you're not going to get the best matchups, if you're not going to have Oklahoma versus Florida and Bama versus Texas and all those things that you're going to see, then I want the most alumni that'll be excited about watching my games.
100%.
And so that's what I want. I'm not going to worry about academics unless the school is essentially a glorified high school, but those schools aren't. BYU is not, Memphis is not, Cincinnati's not, and UCF is certainly not. Mm-hmm. So they're not glorified high schools. They're not that. So let's do that. And then if you get past those 4, then I think about Houston, then I think about other things. But if you're talking about getting to 12, which I think is probably what you need to do to make it viable in the next TV contract, to make it worth that maybe near $20 million, because right now you're at 37, 38, almost 40 by the end of the contract. Well, that's going to go down to 9 or 10. Mm-hmm. You want it to be around 20 to 25 million. If you can get close to that, you can sustain what you're doing now. That's why I do that with those schools. They bring me that.
Yeah, you're essentially buying a stock, right? And hoping that they get better, they continue to grow, the brand continues to grow, on-field product continues to grow. And so I feel good about all 3 of those schools you mentioned, especially UCF. Like UCF to me, in a lot of ways, could trend a lot like a TCU trended when they came from the Mountain West, won the Rose Bowl, beat Wisconsin or whatever it was. I think it was Wisconsin they beat, and then became a much more relevant Power 5 team. Like they were in the playoff conversation not too long ago. And so, I mean, all 3 of those teams fit that bill in one way or another, having played for a New Year's Six Bowl in the last couple of years.
Well, and look, with UCF, that's the largest student body in the country now. Yeah. So again, like those schools are not going to get smaller. No. Like that's the thing. I don't want schools that like all of a sudden get smaller or not going to grow very exponentially. Mm-hmm. You already have that. You already have TCU and Baylor. Those schools aren't going to get very much bigger. Mm-hmm. I want schools that can grow. And again, TCU and Baylor's goal is not to get that much bigger. Yeah. They want to grow, but at their pace. Yeah. As where those schools like Memphis and Cincinnati can continue to like really get big. So that's what I want. BYU, they make new Mormons every single day. They make new ones. It's a factor. It's a factor. Like I grew up Catholic. They make more of us every single day. They grow up and you're Catholic and you know it. So it's the same for BYU. It's the same. So I would absolutely want to get a handle on that emerging population that's going to be a fan of a school in the league.
Yeah, 1,000%. And if it's not those schools, I mean, where like you said Houston maybe, but
Houston would be my 5th choice out of it.
And then you kind of get into the weeds more and more. So I think that's
Houston,
probably
Boise State, all these things. Yeah, I mean it's just so after those 4, again it gets
murky.
The list goes down, and I can give you more, like for all include the 8 schools that are left in the Big 12, and any school you want to add, I can give you more reasons not to add anybody than to add them.
Yeah, and there's a reason why they're still for sale. There's a reason why you haven't been added yet. So everybody we're not anti-AAC, and I think that's been kind of the feedback that I've gotten at least a lot in the comment section, which is fine. But I mean,
we're pro-reality.
Pro-reality, pro-AAC.
Yeah, we're pro-AAC. I'm pro-everybody. I'm pro-everybody, every conference, except for Texas and Florida. I'm pro-everybody. I want everybody to do well. But you have to live in reality of where this is not why it's happening. And also, there's no conspiracy against your school.
No.
It's just this is the, and sometimes maybe people's perception is wrong. Maybe people's perception of UCF has been wrong all this time.
Yeah.
But that's why I'm for expansion in the Big 12. Let's give them a chance to prove that that's wrong.
Yeah.
Let's try. Keeping people down for the sole purpose of you don't do anything for me right now, or you weren't good in 1987, that's dumb.
Yeah.
Let's live in the now. It's 2021. All right, the obligatory realignment segment has thus ended. And we'll probably, I don't know, hopefully we'll do it less, because
Hopefully
but you
there's less
never
to
know.
talk about, yeah.
Yeah,
hopefully.
but I mean, that's the most, of the 3 segments of the show this week, the most comments are going to be about this.
Sure.
Not about our picks and who we liked in the first segment.
Yeah.
And definitely not about Chalk Talk
No.
and Spencer Rattler, who is, it's going to be fun to watch. Believe me, you guys want to see this stuff from Spencer Rattler and how he's grown as a quarterback in the next segment with JD's Chalk Talk. This is the big one, too, on 365 Sports, brought to you by Shorty's Pizza Shack. Chalk Talk is up next.